and that is the interesting thing is that dark is the opposite of light, and that's the easiest comparative thing with any notion. And when you apply it to thermodynamics, that can be a subset, and the light can be the compounded component. And so that's why there's alter egos, and then there isn't an actual alter ego that isn't the real persona of it. And when a design isn't right, you can usually tell because there's two sides that don't match, and so then it would not make sense, or if it did to other things, it could not match on this side. So it means that this thing is incorrect if you're saying that these match versus that. Or that you can fake a design where it's not actually real is by having the two sets not even complete. That's one. And then if you had a more accurate picture of that with a high definition, you could match each angle to the triangles and straight lines and see how accurate that design is. Actual picture of it at the same length. And this straight line is comparative to this straight line. And this angle of 90 degrees is comparative to this right degree angle, but it actually cuts out in the center. And so that's at the tip of the triangle. So that's where the data loses the perspective of the angle of the 90 degree angle at the tip of the triangle. So that would make sense that over here too, it isn't calculated where the tip of this right angle is because its backdrop isn't connected to the shapes, and it goes off into infinity. And it goes off into infinity, so it fades out at the very middle. If you're running really quick and then you change the other lane, that's called a juke move. And if it's an electric diode, then it would be short-circuited if it was running on two wires. And that's the difference between us and a electrical wire. Now, if you want to be more accurate, someone asked what's the difference between you and a cyborg, you'd have to say everything except the spine, because the spine would be, of course, from a human in Japan that was a ninja once who got turned into a robot back in time, and that's what they are until now when something bad happens and then Armageddon occurs. That's what Mortal Kombat is, the Doomsday, and then two bad guys come when Shao Kahn comes. You see two bad guys, and the funniest part I just realized is Shao Kahn, he looks at the two bad guys, Onaga and Blaze, not even as a threat, just as, okay, well now they're part of the Mortal Kombat tournament. But they, I guess in the story, if you read it, they were never entered in. So then that's also funny because they have multiple times where they have the Mortal Kombat tournament more than once. And they started with it saying that this isn't even the first one. There was one before it. So they made MK1. They're like, oh yeah, there was one tournament before it. Whereas a guy who held out for Earthrealm like one time and they never came back. So Shao Kahn got beat by the same guy who Liu Kang comes back and sees in the very end. But if you see bad things happening, that means Mortal Kombat can occur and it's Armageddon all over again. So if you see like a QR code, you can measure it to the size of, oh, I don't know, a picture of a bee. And that's kind of like, so this tiger in the Kung Fu Panda movie gets his hand inside some liquid. And actually I saw this lady having earrings and they were glow sticks and they had shards in it. So some of these shards from the liquid got stuck onto this tiger's hands, and it was waving it around like Liu Kang when he waves around his hands and they're on fire and he's like about to do a fireball or something. So that cat had that ability, but it was with like blue like water, something like Reptile would put. And then what would Aaron Black put? He's like this Nether Realm like cowboy, and then so if he got Kronika's crown, technically he's got a good shot because he's not a DLC character, he's actually in Mortal Kombat. He would put the crown on and then he would gain powers like to make a shadow a bullet. So he'd be shooting a shadow that's a bullet, and on the impact of it, it would be equivalent to like having like 30 like dinosaurs like jumping at one point of time with like a body slam. And that's what his bullet is if he puts like a shadow orbit on it, and the shadow orbit is like the same shadow that Noob Saibot controls when he jumps out of it. So when Aaron Black hits you with that bullet that has that same thing on its tip, instead of a hollow tip, he has that tip, and it is that impact right before the bullet like does something different, because it's a gain a function of two different functions, and those were the two he picked. If he got Kronika's crown, he could do that if he wanted to, because the power is there with the impact. Both my lights work because my friend said that you just have to connect the wire. But if the other friend would have tried to fix it, he would have taken the free light bulb and disconnected the wire and took out the light bulb that was working. It just wasn't plugged in, so it wasn't on. That was the friend who left this in the car. And so that's a line of a daisy chain that happened. And daisy chains can actually end people's... If you're walking down the road with yourself and then your hand touched something that you didn't know got stuck on you earlier, such as just a clear piece of luminescent material, and then you just found out later, because it wasn't even responsive to being sticky, that it was still there, and so you quickly turn to liquid and you pour it on your hand, and it gets gooier and thinner, and you have to pour on a lot of water in order for any of it to come off. That's how an alien invasion of Spider-Man occurred with the character Venom. And I hate to say it, but this could end all race debate, is that the only reason why the Grinch is impressive is because he's a totally different color, and he lives inside of the entire civilization of the Who people, and he bounces in and out. The only important part is that he's actually done that and achieved to create a slide from his house where the open end is just a trash bin in the Whoville, but he pops out nonetheless from the hole from his house. So he's actually accomplished a wormhole, and that's the only point to the whole story of the Grinch Stole Christmas, is that he actually is this green humanoid figure that can pop out of a hole in a town, and he's accomplished doing that. So how that would do is his whole slide was like black. So then this would just be one giant tube that he would go down straight down the middle. And that would probably be like actually mapped out from the size of that, if he knew how to do that, and if it covered the amount of distance. This can be comparative too, like you shouldn't be able to see this kind of thing. And that's clearly like a test, because it's not the spray paint. The spray paint and that are two different things, even though they're both straight lines. Rate of test to almost anything. And you can, the corner of it actually connected. I'd have to say it's connected at both ends, and that's right. And then that's just a test you can run. This width of this light is the same as the width of that, and you can ask someone to say, yeah, it's correct, but at which point? So then you would have to mark down the view where all the points are, and see what point is the clearest to make it the same size of the width of the black, which is equal to parts per billion of that at the base. That's the most accurate estimate, is at the triangle point of this 90-degree angle between the wood and the black thing. And if this was a, if this wood log was a vampire, it would weigh probably like under 200 pounds if he was only like 5'5", because they're really jacked underneath their cape. So 200 pounds of this wood, however, is just like from the concrete up to about here. And so if that was the amount of the vampire, what it could do is like from here to the ground at 90-degree angle. A vampire could pop up from the ground and be standing straight up in a mere second, because that's what he does and is known for coming out. And he can actually come out as like bats, so he could be a bat flying and then come out at that angle and emerge. So what that angle literally would be is this much stump if it was like really heavy, but it's actually way up here. It's actually like way up here where there's like 200 pounds of this log that would be coming up if it was a vampire from the ground, from the shadow at the 90-degree angle. Probably at like 60 miles per hour, because they can go pretty fast. And that was a pseudo kick, and that's what an ostrich does. That's why there's alter egos, and then there isn't an actual alter ego that isn't the real persona of it.